Israel has accused Hamas of using rape as a weapon on a systemic level, and this is a charge that the media has been picking up, especially CNN and Jake Tapper. In fact, here's Jake Tapper suggesting that the UN is ignoring the allegations and ignoring them because of anti-Semitism.
CNN has led the coverage when it comes to the evidence mounting in Israel of rapes and sex crimes committed by Hamas against women and girls, maybe even against men, on October 7th. Why do you think the United Nations and the international community has been so slow to condemn these atrocities? I can't think of a real reason. Well, let me just put it this way. I've heard anti-Semitism hypothesized as a reason why the UN and the international community might be so slow to acknowledge this.
What's your reaction?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you ask me, as somebody who's worked in conflict zones and everything for a very long time, I would say that it's entirely possible that some sexual violence occurred on October 7th. And if it did, that's a horrific war crime, and any perpetrators have to be held accountable under the rule of law. Not held accountable by attacking civilian populations or carrying out torture or abusing fighters or anything like that. But if it did, it wouldn't surprise me, because it always happens. It's a common feature of every armed conflict I've ever seen. And indeed, we know Palestinians have been subjected to sexual violence at the hands of the Israelis, starting with the Nakba in 1947 and 48, and then throughout all of the decades since, and continuing up until today, with reported sexual violence being reported by Palestinian prisoners who've just been released in the prisoner exchange. So we know that that is still going on. So it's entirely possible that someone committed sexual violence on October 7th. It's also possible that there wasn't sexual violence on October 7th, because even though it's a constant feature of all situations of armed conflict, October 7th was just a matter of hours, right? It didn't go on for weeks or days. That would allow a lot of opportunities for abuses by soldiers that are so typical of every conflict. So that's possible as well. The truth is, at this stage, we don't know. And what people are being asked to do is to accept as fact allegations being made by the government of Israel. Remember, this is not victims coming forward. By the government of Israel, which has engaged in serial fabrication of atrocity claims. So what the international community has said, and I agree with, is we need an independent international investigation. This is a serious charge. And if any woman or man was subjected to sexual violence, they have a right to have justice for that. And that means you need an independent international investigation to find out what happened, what didn't happen, right? By the way, that's another reason why you need a ceasefire, because you need to carry out these kinds of investigations. But Israel has refused an international investigation. It's even refused to cooperate with the standing International Commission of Inquiry that is offered to do this. So you can't, on the one hand, say these things have happened and then not allow an investigation to discuss using internationally proven methodologies on how to deal with these things, on whether they have happened. So far, we haven't seen any evidence of one representation that's coming out of the Israeli government is a charge of a campaign of systematic sexual violence, a widespread campaign of, anything is possible, but we haven't seen even a hint of evidence that there was a campaign of systematic sexual violence on October 7th. Doesn't mean there was no sexual violence. And again, I will repeat, so people who are cutting out my comments to attack me as a rape denier, that any acts of sexual violence should be held accountable under the rule of law. But they haven't allowed an international investigation. We know, by the way, I should say, thanks to the Gray Zone and Mondo Weiss and other investigative journalists, there's been a lot of good debunking done, because we've seen, again, Israel muddying the water by disseminating fake evidence. The person who's supposed to be in charge of the investigation disseminated this photograph of a Kurdish woman, horrible victim of another conflict, and then falsely claimed, and this is the person who's supposed to be doing Israel's reporting on this subject, falsely claimed that it was an Israeli woman victim on October 7th.